What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Happy Sunday night. Hope everyone is laying back, chilling, enjoying their Sunday night. Got some basketball on right now. I know. Man, spring training in full force. Man, the Braves getting back at it. Man, it's World Series or bust. I'll probably start talking about the Braves a little bit here in the next few weeks. As we get closer to opening day, because man, when I tell you, I wasn't really planning to do this live. A lot of these lives recently have been impromptu. Um, as I say, the content really is getting ready to ramp up here. We are officially entering NFL Combine Week. We are um, entering, the basically, I guess you can say, the start or the kickoff of the NFL offseason, which is the NFL Combine, where obviously, players, all around the nation come from, um, you know, and, work out. And I mean, we all know what the purpose of the NFL Combine is. It's also, where, you get to talk, with these draft prospects, see what they're all about, really evaluate them. And after the Combine is typically when you start to see the draft order actually fall and the draft boards fall, the way, it looks like they're going to be come draft night. But also, it provides the opportunity for many of these teams, you know GMs around the league, they get to talk with each other, they get to conversate with each other, and they get to negotiate on some potential dealings they would like to have between each other. So that this week coming up is a very big week here around the NFL, but particularly for the Falcons, as um both Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris will be in Indianapolis, I believe, all this week. Evaluating these talents, talking to these prospects, and I think you can almost guarantee that there's probably going to be behind the scenes some wheeling and dealing going on between Terry and some of the different GMs around the league. At least talking to them. Even if that's just saying what's up. On the way to the bathroom, it's gonna be. It's a big week coming up here, and believe it or not, I say this, it's hard to believe the Super Bowl was 2 weeks ago. Man, this off season, everything is kind of moving a little fast for me. I'm not gonna lie. I really, after the Super Bowl, I really kind of got out of tune, with everything for a little bit, kind of unplugged my mind from it. I really haven't had that, it's just, man, where I'm not going to lie. I really haven't had that, man, where it's a matter of fact, I'm like, damn, we're already at, 2 weeks from the start of free agency. The combine is this week. Next week is going to be a big news week, around the NFL, and then obviously in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tomorrow, Monday, March 11th, is the start of free agency. That, it's, when the legal tampering period opens, but that's the start of free agency. That's when we, where these players are going to go. And the Falcons are, going to be, once again, I expect them to be players in free agency, as we have many questions looming with this team, but particularly with the quarterback position. That's obviously the big one that the Falcons have to address. That is no doubt the biggest need this offseason. And I think you have to understand where you're going at this quarterback position before you can really move throughout the rest of free agency. I think if you're going to trade for Justin Fields, and I saw the interview he did with the St. Brown boys this week, him talking about potentially coming to Atlanta. He said, he would definitely be open to the possibility. He gave praise, to Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, all the guys we got over here that, if he were to become our quarterback, he would be throwing the ball to, and he would be playing with alongside those we as playmakers on offense. So, he said the only bad thing, is that he'll have everyone handing up wanting, tickets to the game. Come on, Justin, give me 2 free tickets to this game, man. Don't make us pay. But nah, man, listen. It's obvious he's a hometown kid. I already did the video on Justin Fields. I went through it. There are definitely your concerns with trading for Justin Fields and making that move. And to me, I would honestly probably say that, could I actually see the Falcons making that move? To be honest, when you really look at, the Falcons and making these big time moves and landing these big time names, the Falcons were practically locked to have Deshaun Watson 2 years ago. And he was here basically. I mean, they were literally finalizing the deal. It was about to be officially announced. The paperwork was about to be sent into New York. And they were getting ready to have that introductory press conference. And then, boom, Cleveland swoops in, $230 million. And listen, you can't blame the man. He went up to Cleveland and became their quarterback. And, it appears maybe the Falcons at that time, they ended up dodging a bullet. The Lamar Jackson thing, I'm not really going to talk about because that was never really happening as it was. But still, that's another one. The Falcons were talking. It looked like the Falcons were all, but officially, agreed to terms with Bill Belichick. It looked like it was an inevitability. He was going to become the head coach. He didn't. We hired Raheem Morris as head coach. So with the Falcons, man, nothing is ever certain. You don't ever really know what's going to happen. You don't know what direction they're going to go in until they actually go in it. But this quarterback position is going to have to be one where Terry Fontenot typically likes to be a guy, especially with the draft, that, likes to, keep the cards to himself until the very last second when he has to show them. But this quarterback position, you're gonna have to show your cards here in the next 2 weeks, Terry. You're going to have to show us where you're going, what your cards are. Is it a jack? Is it a spade? Is it a king? Is it a queen? What card do you hold, Terry Fontenot? We're going to have to be able to see that in the next 2 weeks. Whether that is an ultimate trade for Justin Fields, whether that is trading up in the draft, which a very interesting report, I believe from Steve Weiss and Daniel Jeremiah this week, is that the Falcons are going to be aggressive in trying to move up in the NFL draft into that top 3, most likely, to then take one of the 3 quarterbacks. Obviously being Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jane Daniels. So, when I really look at that, I say, listen, you have to keep in mind that, obviously that's another, risk, in its own right, because listen, if you move up into that top 3, and I'm going to talk about this more in a second, and I'll talk about it probably more soon, probably like within the next week or 2, because I think in 2 weeks we're going to know what the Falcons' direction at quarterback is. We're going to know where the Falcons are going to go and address this quarterback position. Whether they trade for one, they trade up in the draft to go and get, one of the top 3 there, or they decide to go in free agency and pick up a quarterback. We're going to know where the Falcons are heading with this quarterback position here in the next 2 weeks, and because I think that this is a situation where you have to know where that quarterback position is before you can move in free agency. That's just how it is in the NFL. So ultimately, if you trade for Justin Fields, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. if you trade up in the draft, that deal is going to be made here in the next 2 weeks. There's not going to be no sitting around, and waiting until as we get closer to the draft. No, that I think is a deal that is made in the next 2 weeks. And if you go and you pick up a quarterback in free agency, that, will be a deal that obviously happens, when the legal tampering period opens. And when looking at, some of those guys that could be available, Kirk Cousins is one name. I do think, when you look at Kirk Cousins, he could be a guy, that does fit what the Falcons, would like to do. However, I believe that Kirk Cousins probably ends up staying in Minnesota. I think that ultimately, now it is interesting because the Vikings are ultimately also gonna have to, pretty damn soon, make a decision on Justin Jefferson. But I think Minnesota ultimately does sign Kirk Cousins back. Russell Wilson, I think when you're looking at free agency, is the name to look at. And I think that's for several reasons. But one of the main ones is that Russell Wilson, though the reports are out, would actually be willing to take a minimum salary contract. And I believe the league and the salary cap was just raised as well. There's $30 million now on the salary cap. So, man, you think Terry, was serious before. Now that extra $30 million has been added, oh man, this dude's gonna go off in free agency. There's no denying that. However, still, I believe the league minimum is somewhere, around like 1.2 million or something like that. There have been reports that, Russell Wilson would be willing to, take that contract. And money isn't a concern for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has already made plenty of money throughout his career. And his wife, obviously. So the Wilsons are not in any way, shape, or form, desperate for money, looking to break the bank, on where Russell goes to next. Because I mean, I know I saw, him say he would like to stay in Denver. I think he's as good as, out of Denver. That relationship, I think, is one that, there's really no going back from. So ultimately, could Russell Wilson come to Atlanta? I think it's a possibility. Just like I think a lot of things are a possibility. I think Justin Fields is a possibility. I think trading up is a possibility. Free agency is a possibility. I think it's definitely a possibility. Now, I have said, if you're asking me what I would want to do, personally, this is me. I think Taylor Heineke is as good as gone. I think you can pencil that in. I think it saves the Falcons about $4 million or something like that. I might actually go onto the spot rack here in a second just to see, where the Falcons, can get in free agency, how much they can get with that salary cap. But, it's definitely you have to look at Taylor Heineke's like as good as gone. And to be honest, I don't know if Desmond Ridder has a roster spot on this team in 2024. He could, just because it's, a very cheap contract. And, but listen, could, and I've heard, Ridder is not going to be, the quarterback one. I don't think there's a scenario where in Raheem Morris's, right mind and Terry Fontenot's right mind, they will allow that. Quarterback two, possibly, but you also have to keep in mind, I think that the Falcons, well, the connection is there with the Rams, that they could maybe want to bring in, someone who, could play that Taylor Heineke role, except maybe on a little bit of a cheaper contract. Someone perhaps maybe like a Carson Wentz comes in here, and is a backup here, for, whoever that, next quarterback is. I think that would probably be if you're going to have a younger quarterback here. And then that probably leaves Ridder competing with Woodside for, bench warmers quarterback spot. But with all that being said, I think you have to really look at this thing and say that, quarterback, while it is the biggest need for the Falcons, it's not the only need, because the Falcons need that premier edge rusher that can absolutely dominate. That is something I think the Falcons really do need to get this offseason. They need to get that premier guy that can set the edge. We haven't had that on a consistent basis since John Abraham. We had, one season out of Vic Beasley where he led the league in sacks. But, with the exception of that one season, we haven't had that premier guy who can set the edge, who can be that dominant force. And could Arnold Ebiketie be that? I don't know. Perhaps, but I just don't know if Arnold Ebiketie is, your premier guy that goes out and sets the edge. I think Arnold Ebiketie is definitely a good rotational piece, which is what Vic Beasley was. Vic Beasley, when he was a rotational pass rusher, that's when you actually saw him producing. But when you go out there and you have his hand in the dirt and, you make him a premier guy out there, that's really when, he feels out of place. You got to have that rotation, but also you have to have that premier guy, and there's definitely some options in free agency. Josh Allen, with the Jacksonville Jaguars is one, that could definitely be out there. That's a name I've heard. Brian Burns, Carolina, that is another name I've been heard. But I don't think the Falcons are looking to pay $30 million a year to an edge rusher. I think, if it comes down to maybe $20 million, okay. But I don't think the Falcons are looking, because let's say the Falcons do go out and signs a quarterback, let's just say Kirk Cousins. They go out and they break the bank for $40 million on Kirk Cousins. You're not going out and signing another guy for $30 million a year. Jalen Ramsey, is Jalen Ramsey going to be available, though? I mean, I wouldn't be against it, but is he going to be available, though? I think that's the thing you have to think about. We do need another corner, though. Whether we decide to re-sign Okudah or we're going to have another safety to go opposite of Jesse. And I would assume you're going out and you're signing another corner in free agency. You're probably picking up another D lineman, that can at least be depth. You probably, at the very least, you need depth at O-line. I would maybe even say that center position should be in question, even though I will say I wouldn't be shocked if they rolled with Dahlman, but I think that center position should at least be in question. And you're going to have at least two new wide receivers on this team. You're going to have that wide receiver, too, that can complement Drake London well, and you got to get a guy in the slot. So there's a lot, to consider. It's not just quarterback. It's these other positions, too. But as I say, quarterback, the Falcons have to figure out where they're going at quarterback in these next 2 weeks so that they can navigate through the rest of free agency. And I think the combine is also going to give them a good idea of, where they really need to eye talent at, where they feel, talent, can be properly evaluated, and especially as you get into these pro days as well. But the combine really resets and is going to do it again this year. It resets how we think about the draft. We have pre-combine draft season. And then once that combine passes, a lot of these draft boards, especially when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, and you're getting into your top 50 and your top 100, yeah, some of the top guys on there might remain the same, but guys who looked like surefire first round picks before the combine are going in the third, fourth round, and vice versa. There are some guys, that no one knows about that could potentially, jump into the late first round or definitely make themselves second, third round picks based off how they do at this combine. So yeah, I'm not going to do a mock draft here tonight. I'll probably do that next week. When we see this combine, we know how these players do. And we have a better idea of what the draft board looks like. But because I don't intend on staying on here too much longer, but I do want to pull something up here to look at. All right. Let's see. I don't know if Spot Rack has plugged in, the new salary cap yet, but would maybe think they would have by now. All right. So let's see. Right now, it's estimated that the Falcons have about $42 million in cap space, just a little under $42 million. So when you really get into it, 37 right now, but so let's see. Let's first off get into these cuts. Let's just say so releasing Taylor Heineke already that frees up like $6 million in cap space. Let's see who else could be a potential cut candidate. Let's see. Mike Hughes, let's see. Does that? Yeah, Mike Hughes, that frees up another $3 million right there. So, I mean, we're already really getting into it. I mean, we've already freed up about $9 million just off of 2 cuts alone. Man, where else? Let's see, where else can we go? I'm looking. Let's see what happens if we cut Lorenzo. So if we cut Lorenzo right there, that's another $4 million. Now, I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say we I'm gonna go ahead and let's say right now we do keep Lorenzo. You restructure Grady. I think that's one of the things that happens this offseason. That saves you right there another $7 million. So now we're at $53 million. Do we restructure Jake? Let's go about restructuring Chris Lindstrom. That saves us $9 million. So the Falcons are going to, and then I just want to see if you really want to get down to it. Let's see about restructuring Jake Matthews. That saves us $10 million right there. Now, see, the thing about restructuring Jake Matthews, you don't know how much longer he's going to be here. So we're going to hold off on that. And man, I would touch AJ Terrell, but I really don't. I would have to see if extending AJ saves us any money. I would assume it would. I would assume it opens up probably about, at least a couple million. So right then and there, the Falcons, it looks like in all likelihood are going to be playing around with about $65 million in free agency. So the Falcons are definitely going to have that wiggle room to go and get some of these guys. But the big key is, you have to really, as you look at this thing, even though you're going to, let's say they do all this, and you have $66 million in free agency, you're going to, at the end of the day, have to look at, what contracts are smart. What is, smart for us short-term and long-term. This is what Terry Fontenot's thinking about. And I don't think signing Kirk Cousins is smart for, the long term. I don't. And I really don't even. I think Kirk goes back to Minnesota. But I mean, 40, I just don't see the Falcons giving out $45 million to a quarterback at this point in time. I think what you're probably honestly going to see is the Falcons are going to either trade, because the Falcons are in win now mode. This is win now mode. They've said it. This is a team that has to make the playoffs. Pretty damn soon, particularly probably this year. So that is where, when you even look at trading up in the draft, are you really honestly actually that serious about it? And I've said it's what I would do, but even at that, you have to think you're in win now mode. So that is where I think a Russell Wilson could definitely come into play. But doing all that, the Falcons have $66 million, well over $66 million to play with in cap space just off of these alone. Matter of fact, I want to see what does I just wanted to see what doing something with McGarry would do. I don't it only freed up a couple million, but even at that, see, just cutting Jonnu Smith, that literally saves $6.5 million right there. So even though, yeah, I would maybe say Jonnu is back, I don't know. That when you look at that saves you $6.5 million. That right there, could be, wide receiver when you're looking at it, or even go towards, getting a corner on this team. So I don't know, man. I think when you look at it, overall, that is where, I definitely think the Falcons go this offseason. And then looking at some of the guys here, CP, one of the things is CP back. I would maybe like to think that he is, just because he's a good guy to have in that locker room. But at the same time, man, I think he has to make that decision for himself. It's really the same thing with Calais. I would welcome both of them back, but I think Calais, he's got to do his due diligence. He's going to figure out, does he want to go another year? And then, if he does he want to do it in Atlanta, or does he want to do it somewhere else? I would love to have Calais back. I think, he's great for that locker room and, for those guys, on the front. But as I say, I really don't know, about those guys. But yeah, no, it's not as much as we had last year, but it's about what? It's going to be pretty close to $70 million. The Falcons are probably going to be playing with this offseason. Heck, if they really want to get greedy, they can probably have close to $80 million to spend within free agency. If they really, want to restructure Jake Matthews, cut Jonnu Smith, the Falcons would be at that point playing with about $80 million in free agency. But I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to look at. So we got the combine coming up this week. Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris will be speaking on Tuesday, both of them. So I might come back on Tuesday. I'm not going to make any promises, but I might come back on Tuesday and react to what they had to say in Indy, and then obviously see how these guys do at the combine this week. And if any news breaks, obviously I'll be here talking about it, and as I say, it's really getting ready to heat up. And also I'm probably going to make some more videos about where the Falcons do potentially go at quarterback. Also, probably either this week or next week, I'll be making videos talking about some top targets for the Falcons in free agency. Top edge rushers, top D linemen, top corners, top receivers, you name it, man. But anyways, with that being said, appreciate you all for watching. If y'all watch, on playback, y'all know what to do, man. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, post notification bell. All your support's greatly appreciated. And I will see you guys in the next one.